You know the number. Maybe you saw your own job advertised, the same title and roughly the same work, with a band on it that starts above where you are. Maybe someone left and you found out what they'd been on. Maybe a recruiter said a figure on the phone in a bored voice, as though it were ordinary, and you thought about it for the rest of the day. So, you know, and you've had the conversation. In the car, mostly. You've done it beautifully several times, at traffic lights with excellent phrasing. And you haven't asked. Here's what almost everyone does instead, and why every one of those routes costs more than the sentence would have. Then I'll tell you what a man who was one of the richest people in Rome said when they attacked him for it, and why he's the only philosopher who can settle this. 3 doors. The first is to wait to be noticed, and it's the respectable one, so it's worth being precise about what's wrong with it. The belief underneath it is that good work is visible, that the people above you are broadly fair, and that asking would cheapen something that ought to be given. Fine. Now look at who you're waiting for. You are waiting for a person whose job description includes controlling costs to voluntarily inform you that you're cheaper than the market. Nobody has ever received that email. Not because they're villains, because from where they sit, an employee who hasn't raised it is an employee for whom it isn't a problem. Your silence isn't read as patience. It's read as data. The second door is to leave instead of asking. And this genuinely works, which is what makes it such an expensive habit. But sit with the shape of it. You are willing to reorganize your whole working life, lose every relationship you've built, and start again at the bottom of a new set of politics, rather than say one sentence to somebody you already know. That's not a career strategy. It's an avoidance strategy that happens to pay. The third door is the quiet one and the most common. The resentment discount. You don't ask, you don't leave, and instead you make an adjustment. You stop doing the extra bit. You stop volunteering the good idea. You start counting in a way you never used to, and you tell yourself this is fairness finding its own level. Understand what you've done. You were worried they'd underpay you, so you've underdelivered to match. You've given yourself the pay cut. And 2 years of that does not produce a person anybody is about to promote, so the whole thing closes into a loop and locks. Here's the thread. All 3 exist to avoid one sentence being said out loud, once, in a room, and each of them costs more than the sentence. Now, before the moves, the objection, because half of you have been sitting there for 4 minutes thinking this is a strange subject for a Stoic channel. Aren't you meant to be above this? Seneca is the right man to answer that, because he was extremely, conspicuously rich. Estates, loans, one of the great fortunes of the age. And he was attacked for it in public. How does a man who writes about the simple life come to own half of Italy? It's the obvious hit, and they took it. His answer, in On the Happy Life, does not squirm. He says plainly, I am not a wise man, and I'm not going to be one. Hold me to whether I'm getting better. And then the distinction that matters here. The Stoic position was never that money is bad. It was that money is external, a thing you may perfectly well prefer to have and must not need. He put it as sharply as anyone ever has. Riches are the slave of the wise man and the master of the fool. Both halves are load-bearing. If the money runs you, you've lost. But a philosophy that requires you to be paid badly in order to stay pure isn't a philosophy. It's an alibi, and a very convenient one for the person signing your contract. So the question isn't whether you're allowed to want it. The question is why you haven't asked. And Epictetus is unusually blunt about that. Think about the man who got the invitation you didn't get, he says. He paid for it. He went to the house. He waited at the door. He said the flattering thing. Those are the prices, and he paid them, and that is why he has the thing. Then the image that makes it stick. Lettuces cost an obol. If a man hands over his obol and takes the lettuce, and you keep your obol and have no lettuce, you have not been cheated. He has the lettuce. You have the obol. And then Epictetus turns, and the knife is not aimed at the other man. You are unjust and insatiable, he says, if you are unwilling to pay the price these things are sold for and want them for nothing. That is the sentence for this episode. Because here is the price of being paid what the role pays. It is one uncomfortable conversation. That's the whole invoice. And you have decided not to pay it, which you are entirely entitled to do. But if you don't pay it, you have to stop calling the result an injustice. It isn't unfair. It's unsent. Now the moves. 3 of them. Move 1. Price the role, not yourself. You cannot have a productive argument about your worth. It's unfalsifiable. Both of you know it. And it turns the conversation into a referendum on how you feel, which is the worst possible ground for you. What you can do is establish what this scope of work is priced at this year. 2 live advertisements for a job that is genuinely yours, and 1 honest number from a peer outside your building. Now there's a figure in the room that neither of you invented, and the conversation stops being about whether you're good and starts being about whether the company is paying the rate. Only one of those has a right answer. Move 2. Ask for the number, not for consideration. Is there any room on salary? Is not a request, it's a survey. And the answer to a survey is always, let's look at it in the cycle. Say the figure. I'm looking to be at 78. What would it take to get there by the review? An actual number and an actual date in one line. And notice why you don't want to say it that way. Vagueness protects you from a clean refusal. It also guarantees you get nothing because it lets them agree with your feelings instead of answering your figure. A soft ask isn't polite. It's a way of losing without having to watch. Move 3. Decide what each answer means before you go in. There are 3 possible replies. Yes, a specific date, or no. Write down now what you do in each case. Because if you haven't, you will hear, let's revisit this later in the year, and you will walk out feeling it went well. It didn't. Revisit is not an answer. It's the sentence people use to end conversations. And if you haven't decided in advance what you do with it, you'll accept it, and you'll be back here in 18 months having another one at the traffic lights. Because here's the thing underneath all of this, and it isn't really about money. You're not afraid of the no. You've had a no before. It's survivable. It's a Tuesday. What you're afraid of is finding out what they think you're worth. Right now, in the current arrangement, you get to believe the gap is an oversight, that nobody's looked, that it'll be corrected when someone notices. The moment you ask, that stops being available. It becomes a number somebody chose on purpose with you in mind. That's what the 18 months have been buying you. Not fairness, not dignity, not the moral high ground, just the ability not to know. So here's the rule. Write it down. It isn't unfair. It's unsent. This week, 3 things. 1. Find 2 live ads for your own job and write the band down where you can see it. 2. Write the exact sentence you'll say. A number and a date, nothing softening it at either end, and say it out loud once so it stops sounding enormous. 3. Decide tonight what you'll do with a no, so that when it comes, you're executing a plan instead of improvising with your pride. You will not be able to make somebody pay you well because you deserve it. Epictetus watched Rome run on exactly that hope and told his students it was a fantasy. What you always control is whether the number was ever actually said. Master that, and you stop waiting for a correction that nobody has been assigned. If this helped, like it and subscribe. There's a new one every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And do one more thing. Send this to the person who found out what the new hire is on, and then said it was fine. You know exactly who they are. They'll tell you it's not really about the money, and then they'll be on a job site at 11 tonight. The journal's in the description if you want the weekly version. And watch this one next. You made the mistake. Here's the Stoic recovery.